Question 1. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Windows Autopilot supports provisioning of both new and existing devices. True. Stabilizing deployment phases is important to ensure smooth rollout. True, AppV is the recommended virtualization method beyond 2026. False. Hardware accounts for most of the deployment process cost. True. Now that we've reviewed the statements and their correct classifications, I will move into the explanation. To begin, Windows Autopilot is marked true because it provisions both new and existing Windows 10 and later devices, allowing organizations to streamline onboarding effortlessly. Next, stabilizing deployment phases is also true, since each phase must operate without major issues before progressing. Otherwise, unresolved problems cascade into later steps and disrupt the rollout. Meanwhile, the AppV statement is false because AppV is retiring in 2026, and organizations are encouraged to transition toward Azure Virtual Desktop combined with MSIX for long-term application delivery. Finally, hardware accounting for most deployment cost is true, as real-world budgeting consistently shows that devices themselves represent nearly half of the overall deployment expenditure. This sequence of explanations highlights why each true or false classification aligns with modern deployment practice and Microsoft's guidance. Question 2. Which two editions of Windows are only available through academic volume licensing? Select two answers. A. Home. B. Pro Education. C. Education. D. Enterprise LTSC. The correct answers are B. Pro Education and C. Education. Now that we have identified the correct editions, I will shift into the explanation. Pro Education is included because it is specifically created for educational institutions and is distributed solely through academic volume licensing, ensuring schools access features tailored for learning environments. Furthermore, the Education Edition is correct since it provides enterprise-level capabilities for schools and is likewise available exclusively through academic licensing channels. Home, however, is incorrect because it is offered universally to the general consumer market without any academic requirement. Additionally, Enterprise LTSC does not qualify here since it is obtained through standard enterprise volume licensing rather than academic-specific agreements. This clarification shows why Pro Education and Education are the only editions tied directly to academic licensing models. Question 3. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Hyper-V compatibility can be verified by running systeminfo.exe in PowerShell or command prompt and confirming that all requirements show yes. Now that the completed statement is clear, I will move into the explanation. To start, systeminfo.exe is the correct tool because it provides a detailed breakdown of Hyper-V readiness, displaying whether virtualization, firmware, and CPU requirements are supported. Moreover, PowerShell or command prompt is appropriate since systeminfo.exe can be executed in either environment without any difference in output, making it flexible for administrators. Finally, the value yes is essential, because it indicates that each prerequisite for Hyper-V is fully met, allowing the system to host virtual machines without issues. Conversely, alternatives like DXDiag, BIOS, Device Manager, or Windows settings would not work here, since they do not display Hyper-V readiness, and therefore cannot validate compatibility. Altogether, these choices form the correct sequence for confirming whether a device is ready to run Hyper-V successfully. Question 4. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To connect to Microsoft Entra ID using PowerShell, you use the Connect Emigraph cmdlet. To create multiple users efficiently, you can import account data from a CSV file and use the new MUG cmdlet to create accounts in bulk. Now that the completed statement is clear, I will transition into the explanation. First, Connect MG Graph is correct because it is the Microsoft Graph commandlet designed specifically for establishing a session with Entra ID, allowing administrators to manage directory resources through Graph API calls. Additionally, CSV file is accurate since this structured format supports organized bulk imports, letting PowerShell read multiple user records efficiently during automation. Furthermore, new MG-User is the right commandlet because it creates accounts within Entra ID using the Microsoft Graph SDK, making it ideal for bulk provisioning scenarios. Meanwhile, Connect As Account would not apply here because it targets Azure Resource Manager, not Entra ID, and a TXT file cannot reliably structure data for bulk records. Likewise, Add MG-User is invalid since it is not an actual cmdlet, making new MG-User the proper choice for account creation. Altogether, these selections outline the correct workflow for connecting to Entra ID and generating multiple accounts programmatically through PowerShell. Question 5. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Microsoft Entra Connect must be installed on a domain controller. False, it is possible to install Microsoft Entra Connect on any machine, even if it's not domain joined. False, installing Microsoft Entra Connect on a domain controller is supported but not preferred. True, Microsoft Entra Connect initiates all communication, so inbound internet access is not required. Now that the correct true or false values are set, I will move into the explanation. To begin, the requirement to install Entra Connect on a domain controller is false because although supported, it is not mandatory. The tool can run on any suitable domain-joined server. Similarly, installing it on a non-domain joined machine is also false since Entra Connect depends on domain membership to access and synchronize Active Directory objects. Moreover, installing Entra Connect on a domain controller is true in terms of support, yet organizations usually avoid this except in small environments due to performance and security considerations. Finally, the statement about outbound communication is true because Entra Connect exclusively initiates outbound traffic to Microsoft services, removing the need for inbound firewall openings. Together, these explanations clarify how installation requirements and communication patterns shape best practices for deploying Microsoft Entra Connect. Question 6. Which statement about Microsoft Application Virtualization App V is accurate based on its product lifecycle? Select one answer. A. App V is the long-term recommended solution for app virtualization. B. App V is supported indefinitely for all Windows 11 builds. C. App V will reach end of life in 2026. MSX App Attach is the modern alternative. D. App V only supports 32-bit Windows clients. The correct answer is C. App V will reach end of life in 2026. MSIX App Attach is the modern alternative. Here's the reasoning behind it. App V is reaching its end of life, so option C is accurate because Microsoft has confirmed support ends in 2026, and organizations are encouraged to transition toward MSIX App Attach for modern virtualization scenarios. In contrast, option A is incorrect since App V is not the long-term recommendation. It is being deprecated. Likewise, option B cannot be correct because support does not continue indefinitely across all Windows 11 builds. Additionally, option D is false because App V works with both 32-bit and 64-bit clients, making the statement inaccurate. This explanation shows why only option C reflects Microsoft's current lifecycle guidance for app virtualization. Question 7. For each Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2 feature, drag it to the appropriate capability description. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Enables password resets that follow on-premises AD password policies. Password reset with write-back. Provides hybrid identity integration across multiple on-prem identity stores. Microsoft Identity Manager MM. Monitors directory synchronization, alerts, and performance for Microsoft Entra Connect deployments. Entra Connect Health. Detects frequently accessed SaaS applications in your environment. Cloud App Discovery. Supports MFA for Azure, M365, Dynamics 365, and VPNs, but not all non-browser apps. Multi-factor authentication. MFA. After reviewing the matched items, I will explain the reasoning. Password reset with write-back is correct because it enables self-service password resets that still honor on-premises Active Directory policies, ensuring a consistent hybrid identity experience. Microsoft Identity Manager fits the second description since it extends Entra ID by integrating multiple on-premises directories such as ADDS, LDAP, and Oracle, supporting unified identity management. Entra Connect Health aligns with the monitoring description because it delivers diagnostics and alerts for synchronization and configuration issues in hybrid deployments. Cloud App Discovery matches the SaaS detection capability as it identifies frequently used cloud services, often revealing unmanaged or shadow IT applications. Multi-factor authentication is appropriate for the final statement because Entra ID P1 includes MFA across major Microsoft cloud services and VPNs, although some non-browser apps do not support it. Unused items like Visual Studio integration and Entra tenant renaming do not relate to P1 or P2 identity features and therefore are not matched. These explanations confirm why each feature aligns with its respective description. Question 8. You're advising a school IT administrator about upgrading their current fleet of Windows 10 devices. The goal is to ensure compatibility with management via Microsoft Intune, enable BitLocker encryption, and support device provisioning using Autopilot. Which Windows edition should you recommend? Select one answer. A. Pro, B. Education, C. Home, D. IoT Enterprise. The correct answer is A. Pro. Let's go through why Pro is the best fit in this scenario. Pro is ideal because it supports Microsoft Intune through MDM management, includes BitLocker for full disk encryption, and works with Windows Autopilot for streamlined device provisioning across the school's Windows 10 fleet. Education, although it has many enterprise-level features, is primarily tied to academic volume licensing and may not always be available through standard upgrade channels for every organization. Home is unsuitable here because it lacks native support for key enterprise capabilities such as BitLocker management at scale, Autopilot, and robust MDM integration, which would limit centralized control for the IT administrator. IoT Enterprise is designed for embedded or fixed-purpose devices like kiosks or ATMs, not for general classroom or staff computers, so it would not meet the needs of typical education workloads. Altogether, these points show that Windows 10 Pro is the edition that aligns with Intune management, security through BitLocker, and Autopilot-based provisioning for the school environment. Question 9. Which two user types can be created in Microsoft Entra ID through the Azure portal? Select two answers. A. Member users. B. External federated users. C. Guest users. D. Service accounts. The correct answers are A. Member users and C. Guest users. Here is the reasoning behind these choices. Member users are created directly within the Entra ID tenant and are fully managed accounts, making them the most common type organizations set up for internal staff. Guest users are also valid because they allow external individuals to be added through the portal so that access can be granted without giving them full tenant membership. External federated users do not qualify since federation relates to authentication trust relationships, not a user type that can be created manually in the portal. Service accounts are not available as a user type for direct creation, as Entra ID does not provide a dedicated service account category within the portal. These points show why only member users and guest users match the options that can be created through the Azure portal. Question 10. A retail company operates several temporary pop-up stores without local domain infrastructure. They issue tablets and smartphones to seasonal workers who need access to Microsoft 365 resources. The IT team wants centralized identity and policy management for these users and their devices. Which two features of Microsoft Entra join support this scenario? Select two answers. A. It allows group policy management of mobile devices. B. It supports access restriction based on compliance policies. C. It supports secure access via Windows Hello. D. It enables SSO only when on the corporate network. E. It requires an ADDS domain to function. The correct answers are B. It supports access restriction based on compliance policies. And C. It supports secure access via Windows Hello. After selecting these options, I will explain why they are appropriate for the pop-up stores scenario. First, compliance-based access in option B is crucial, because Microsoft Entra Join works with MDM solutions like Intune to check device health, encryption, and other policies before granting access, which is ideal for seasonal workers using mobile devices in different locations. Furthermore, option C fits since Entra Join devices can use Windows Hello for Business, providing passwordless and secure sign-in even when users are away from any on-premises network, reducing the risk of credential theft on shared or temporary hardware. However, option A is incorrect because traditional group policy relies on Active Directory domain services and does not manage Entra-joined mobile devices in these cloud-first environments. Similarly, option D is wrong as single sign-on with Entra Join does not depend on being on a corporate network. Users can still enjoy SSO over the internet to Microsoft 365. Finally, option E cannot be right because Entra Join is explicitly designed to remove the dependency on an ADDS domain, which is why it suits remote and temporary store setups so well. Question 11. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Devices running Windows 10 or 11 can be configured for automatic MDM enrollment through group policy, whereas devices running iOS or Android must be enrolled manually using the company portal app. Let's break down why these choices are correct. First, Windows 10 and 11 are designed to support automatic MDM enrollment, especially when the device is joined to on-premises Active Directory and synchronized to Entra ID. Additionally, group policy is the correct mechanism because it can push the automatic MDM enrollment setting to Windows clients so users are silently enrolled without extra steps. Furthermore, iOS or Android devices do not integrate with group policy, so they rely on a user-driven process instead of automatic enrollment from the domain environment. In this context, the company portal app is required because it guides mobile users through sign-in and registration, which completes manual enrollment into Intune. However, Microsoft Defender focuses on threat protection, conditional access controls, access decisions after enrollment. Windows 7 is not supported for modern Intune enrollment, and mobile access policy is not a real enrollment method. Altogether, this is why Windows 10-11 with group policy and iOS or Android with the company portal app form the correct combination for this fill-in-the-blanks question. Question 12. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. You can use conditional access policies to enforce that only enrolled devices access email. True. Intune supports automatic MDM enrollment for Android and iOS devices. False. You must add an Apple Push Notification APN certificate to enroll macOS devices. True. The company portal app is pre-installed on most iOS and Android devices. False. Here is the reasoning behind each classification. Conditional access is true because it can block sign-in to services like Exchange Online until the device completes enrollment, ensuring only compliant devices gain access. Automatic enrollment for Android and iOS is false since these platforms require manual enrollment steps. Only Windows devices can be configured for automatic MDM enrollment. Requiring an APN certificate is true because macOS and iOS devices need this Apple-issued certificate for secure communication with Intune during enrollment. Finally, the pre-installation claim is false because users must download the company portal app from the App Store or Google Play. It does not ship preloaded on devices. These explanations clarify why each statement is marked true or false. Question 13. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. If no CNAME record is found during enrollment, users must enter enrollment.manage.microsoft.com manually. True. TTL, time to live for CNAME records used in Intune DNS configuration must be set to 1 hour. True. The MDM compliance URL must be customized before automatic enrollment will work. False. Setting MDM user scope to none disables automatic enrollment. True. Let's look at why each statement is marked this way. If the automatic discovery CNAME is missing, users fall back to manually typing enrollment.manage.microsoft.com, so that statement is true because it describes the correct fallback behavior. The TTL requirement is also true, since using a 1-hour value helps DNS changes propagate quickly, which keeps enrollment responses accurate and timely. The statement about customizing the MDM compliance URL is false, because Intune can operate with the default URL. Customizing it is optional and not a prerequisite for automatic enrollment. Finally, setting the MDM user scope to none is true for disabling automatic enrollment, as this scope prevents any user in the tenant from having devices automatically enrolled into MDM. Together, these points clarify how DNS settings and MDM user scope affect Intune enrollment behavior. Question 14. An IT admin receives a report that a user cannot create a work profile during Android enrollment. The user is trying to enroll a personal device into Intune using the company portal app. What is the most likely cause of the issue? Select one answer. A. The user isn't signed into the Microsoft Intune Admin Center. B. The device is not compatible with Android Enterprise work profiles. C. The company portal app was installed from the Apple App Store. D. The admin hasn't set up Windows Configuration Designer for the user. The correct answer is B. The device is not compatible with Android Enterprise work profiles. Here is the reasoning behind that choice. Some Android devices, particularly older models or those running manufacturer-restricted builds, do not support the creation of work profiles, so the enrollment process fails at the point where the profile should be created. Option A is incorrect because end users never sign into the Intune Admin Center. Administrators do, so this would not affect work profile creation. Option C cannot be right since installing the company portal app from the Apple App Store would only matter for iOS devices, not Android. Option D is also unrelated because Windows Configuration Designer is used for Windows bulk enrollment, not for Android Enterprise work profile setup. These details confirm that device incompatibility with Android Enterprise work profiles is the most likely cause of the issue. Question 15. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To manage Microsoft Entra joined devices, you must integrate Microsoft Intune with Microsoft Entra ID. For automatic enrollment to work, users must be assigned a valid Intune license, and the tenant used must be the same Microsoft Entra tenant, where Intune is configured. After reviewing the completed statement, I will explain the logic behind these choices. First, Microsoft Intune is the correct service to integrate because it provides the cloud-based device management that actually enrolls and manages Microsoft Intune devices. Additionally, users need an Intune license since enrollment and policy targeting only apply to accounts that are properly licensed. Without that license, devices cannot be brought under management. Furthermore, using the same Microsoft Entra tenant is essential because Intune and Entra ID must reside in the same tenant so that device objects, user identities, and policies can link correctly across both services. By contrast, options like Azure Policy, Endpoint DLP, or Defender for Endpoint focus on security and compliance rather than core device enrollment, and licenses, such as standalone compliance licenses or a different Azure tenant, do not enable Intune to manage devices across tenant boundaries. Altogether, integrating Microsoft Intune, assigning an Intune license, and keeping everything in the same Microsoft Entra tenant are what make automatic enrollment function as expected. Question 16. For each Configuration Manager client monitoring feature, drag it to the appropriate boxes in the correct match column to match it against its description. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Sends ping-like messages to management point every few minutes. Client online status. Evaluates client activity based on communication within 7 days. Client activity. Identifies the most frequent user based on 60-day login history. Primary user. Enables remediation of client issues based on compliance evaluations. Client check. Let's walk through why each item fits its description. Client online status is the right match for the first description because Configuration Manager uses regular ping like messages from the client to determine whether a device is online. Missing responses, mark it as offline. Client activity aligns with the second description since it evaluates whether the client has communicated recently through heartbeat messages, policy retrieval, or inventory submissions within the past 7 days. Primary user fits the third description because it analyzes login data over a 60-day window to determine which user interacts with the device most frequently, allowing accurate user device mapping. Client check applies to the final description because it performs periodic assessments of the device configuration and can remediate issues automatically if compliance settings allow it. Meanwhile, device collections and endpoint protection do not belong here because they are not monitoring statuses. One is for grouping devices, and the other focuses on security rather than client monitoring. These matches collectively reflect how Configuration Manager tracks client health, usage, and connectivity. Question 17. What is the purpose of the Fresh Start remote action available for Windows 10 devices in Intune? Select one answer. A. Remove OEM pre-installed apps and reinstall the OS. B. Reinstall the OS while preserving apps and data. C. Reset the device while preserving enrollment and user account. D. Update the Microsoft Defender malware definitions. The correct answer is A. Remove OEM pre-installed apps and reinstall the OS. Here is the explanation behind that selection. Fresh Start removes OEM bloatware and reinstalls a clean copy of Windows, which can significantly improve performance and provide a standardized experience for managed devices. Option B is incorrect because Fresh Start does not preserve installed apps. It removes them as part of the cleanup. Option C does not fit because preserving enrollment and the user account is characteristic of the wipe action with the retain option, not Fresh Start. Option D is unrelated since updating Defender definitions is a separate remote action focused solely on security updates. These points confirm why Fresh Start's main purpose is to remove OEM pre-installed software and reinstall a clean Windows environment. Question 18. Which of the following is a valid reason to use a collection in Configuration Manager? Select one answer. A. To execute PowerShell scripts across multiple Azure tenants. B. To run a report summarizing application installations for a group of devices. C. To trigger Microsoft Defender updates on unmanaged endpoints. D. To connect to an Intune managed device using remote assistance. The correct answer is B. To run a report summarizing application installations for a group of devices. Here's the reasoning behind this choice. Collections in Configuration Manager group devices or users, so administrators can target them for reporting, deployments, or compliance evaluation, which makes running a summary report on application installations an appropriate use case. Option A is incorrect because config-mgr collections do not span multiple Azure tenants, nor are they intended for cross-tenant PowerShell execution. Option C does not apply, as config-mgr manages only its own clients. It cannot trigger Defender updates on devices it does not manage. Option D is also incorrect since remote assistance for Intune managed devices is handled through Intune tools, not Configuration Manager. These points show that reporting on group devices is the valid and intended purpose of using a config-mgr collection. Question 19. For each statement below, indicate whether it is true or false. The kiosk profile allows devices to run only a single app. Kiosk profiles can configure a customized start menu. True. You can use a kiosk profile to deploy VPN certificates. Kiosk profiles are supported only on Windows devices. False? Let's clarify why each classification is correct. The first statement is true because kiosk mode can lock a device into single app usage, which is common in point-of-sale or display scenarios. The second statement is also true, since kiosk profiles allow customization of the start menu and controlled user experience, especially for fixed-purpose devices. The third statement is false because VPN certificates are deployed using certificate profiles, not through kiosk configuration, which is strictly for interface and app restrictions. The fourth statement is false because kiosk mode is supported on multiple platforms, including Android and Windows, so it is not exclusive to Windows. These explanations outline how kiosk profiles function and what they cannot configure. Question 20. Which two features are benefits of using folder redirection? Select two answers. A. Data is stored on the user's local disk for faster access. B. Data is accessible from any domain-joined computer. C. The offline files feature must be disabled. D. Data can be centrally backed up on the network. The correct answers are B. Data is accessible from any domain-joined computer, and D. Data can be centrally backed up on the network. Here is the reasoning behind these selections. Redirected folders reside on network shares, which allows users to access their files from any domain-joined computer, making option B a clear benefit. Additionally, because the data remains on the network rather than the local device, IT can centrally back up and manage that data, which is why option D is correct. Option A is incorrect since redirected folders do not store data locally by default. The primary location is the network share. Option C is also wrong because offline files is typically enabled to support access during temporary network outages, so it does not need to be disabled for folder redirection to work. These points highlight the core advantages of folder redirection in a domain environment. Question 21. Fill in the blank by selecting the correct option from the drop-down menu. The offline files feature ensures access to redirected folders even without connectivity. Here is why this choice is correct. Offline files synchronizes copies of redirected folders locally so users can continue working when the network is unavailable, making it essential for maintaining file access during outages. App data folder is unrelated because it handles local application data rather than folder redirection. Local profile does not provide offline access for redirected folders, as non-roaming profiles do not sync network content. The HKLM Hive and User Hive refer to registry locations and do not enable offline folder access. Credential Manager manages authentication secrets and therefore cannot guarantee file availability. This confirms that offline files is the feature that ensures continued access to redirected folders when the network is unavailable. Question 22. For each Intune device profile monitoring chart, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it with what it displays. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Displays the number of devices assigned to a specific profile. Top graphical chart displays the number of users assigned to a specific profile. Bottom graphical chart opens the device status list filtered to the selected platform. Circle in top chart opens the user status list filtered to the selected platform. Circle in bottom chart. Here's the reasoning behind these matches, Liz. The top graphical chart is correct for device counts because it visualizes how many devices receive the selected profile, filtered by platforms such as Windows 10 and later. The bottom graphical chart fits user counts since it shows how many users were assigned to the same profile, also filtered by platform. Selecting the circle in the top chart opens the device status list, providing detailed deployment results for devices and whether the profile applied successfully. Similarly, selecting the circle in the bottom chart opens the user status list, showing which users received the profile and the success of those assignments. Unused items like the user-to-device mapping chart or a policy compliance heat map do not apply here because Intune does not present deployment details in those formats for this view. These matches accurately reflect how Intune visualizes device and user assignment data for configuration profiles. Question 23. Arrange the steps required to configure a mandatory user profile in the correct order. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Configure the user with a roaming user profile. Navigate to the profile storage location, locate the enduser.dat file. Rename enduser.dat to enduser.man. Assign the user to the newly renamed profile. Here is the explanation for this sequence. To begin, a roaming user profile must be configured because mandatory profiles are built upon the roaming profile structure and rely on its storage path. Next, navigating to the profile storage location is necessary so the administrator can access the profile files associated with the user. After reaching that location, the enduser.dat file needs to be found, as this file defines the user's registry hive for the profile. Renaming enduser.dat to enduser.man is what converts the profile into a mandatory one by making it read-only and preventing users from saving changes. Finally, the user is assigned to this newly renamed profile so that each login loads the mandatory configuration consistently. This order ensures the profile is prepared correctly and behaves as a mandatory profile during user sign-in. Question 24. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Group policy supports deployment of applications only in MSI format. True, group policy can control the exact time and reboot behavior of installations. False. Removing a software package via group policy is only possible if it was originally deployed using GPO. True. Group policy includes a built-in reporting dashboard to track installation success. False. Here is the reasoning behind these classifications. The first statement is true because group policy software installation works only with .msi packages. .exe installers must be repackaged into .msi files to be deployed this way. The second statement is false since group policy offers very limited scheduling and reboot control, unlike more advanced deployment tools such as Configuration Manager. The third statement is true because group policy can only remove software it previously installed itself. It cannot uninstall applications deployed by other methods. The final statement is false because group policy does not provide a reporting dashboard to track deployment outcomes, leaving administrators without built-in visibility into installation success. These points summarize the core limitations and behaviors of group policy software deployment. Question 25. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To make an app available to unenrolled users, assign it to a user group and select Available with, or without enrollment as the assignment type. Here is why these selections are correct. Apps intended for unenrolled devices must be targeted at user groups because device groups apply only when the device is already enrolled. Additionally, the assignment type, Available with or without enrollment, is the only option that permits users to install the app even if their device has not been enrolled in Intune, making it suitable for bring your own device scenarios. Device group is incorrect because unenrolled devices do not appear in device groups. Required would force installation but only works for enrolled devices, so it cannot apply here. Not applicable suppresses deployment entirely, and public only refers to unmanaged store apps, neither of which match the scenario. These choices ensure that unenrolled users can still access and install the intended application. Question 26. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. The Office customization tool can be used to modify existing configuration files. True, Configuration Manager is suitable for small businesses without an IT department. False. End users can install Microsoft 365 apps through the portal without admin rights. False. The Office deployment tool can be used in conjunction with Intune. True. Here is the reasoning behind each classification. The first statement is true because the Office customization tool allows importing existing configuration files, modifying them, and exporting updated versions, making it useful for maintaining deployment settings. The second statement is false since Configuration Manager is built for large-scale enterprise management and requires dedicated IT staff and infrastructure, making it unsuitable for small businesses lacking an IT department. The third statement is false because installing Microsoft 365 apps locally requires admin rights on the device, even if the installer is launched from the Microsoft 365 portal. The fourth statement is true because Intune can deploy Office using configuration files generated by the Office deployment tool, allowing organizations to combine both tools effectively. These explanations clarify how each tool functions and why the statements are classified this way. Question 27. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. In Intune, the Discovered Apps page shows apps found during hardware inventory scans. On personal devices, this includes only apps deployed through the company portal or required deployments. Here is the reasoning for these selections. The Discovered Apps view displays inventory results, showing which applications Intune detects on managed devices, based on hardware inventory scans. On personal or unenrolled devices, visibility is limited, so only apps deployed through the company portal or those pushed as required appear in this list. Compliance policies do not influence which apps appear here. Manual installs on personal devices are not reported, and license tracking or update channels are unrelated to app discovery. These points confirm why Discovered Apps and Company Portal are the correct choices for this fill-in-the-blank scenario. Question 28. Arrange the steps to create a new application in Configuration Manager. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Choose Create Application from the Configuration Manager console. Automatically detect app info from MSI. Fill in general information and metadata fields. Add the full installation command optional with parameters. Complete the wizard and review in Application Management. Here is how this order works. The process begins by choosing Create Application, which launches the Application Creation Wizard in Configuration Manager. Next, when using in .msi, Configuration Manager can automatically detect key application information, speeding up setup. After that, you fill in the general metadata such as name, publisher, and version to properly identify the application. Then you add or refine the full installation command, including any necessary parameters to ensure proper deployment behavior. Finally, completing the wizard publishes the application into Application Management, where it can be deployed to collections. This sequence reflects the standard workflow for creating an application in Configuration Manager. Question 29. For each app management category, drag it to the appropriate behavior in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. App is assigned via Intune and can be selectively wiped. Managed app. App is publicly available and not controlled by Intune. Unmanaged app. App has added protections like PIN, jailbreak detection, and data flow control. MAM-protected app. Here is why each match is correct. A managed app is deployed and controlled through Intune, giving administrators the ability to selectively wipe corporate data, manage updates, and track inventory. An unmanaged app is one the user installs directly from a public app store, meaning Intune has no lifecycle control or enforcement over it. A MAM-protected app is wrapped or SDK integrated and follows Intune app protection policies, enabling features such as PIN requirements, jailbreak detection, and controlled data movement. Conditional Access App and Company Portal App are not valid categories in this context, as they refer to access policies and an installation tool rather than app management types. These explanations reflect how Intune differentiates between managed, unmanaged, and MAM-protected applications. Question 30. Arrange the following steps to deploy an app using Intune. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Ensure Intune supports the app. Create Microsoft Entra user or device groups. Add the app to Intune. Configure policies if needed. Monitor deployment results. Here is the reasoning behind the correct sequence. You begin by confirming that the app type is supported by Intune, since deployment options differ depending on whether the app is Win32, MSI, iOS, Android, macOS, or store-based. After verifying compatibility, you create the Microsoft Entra user or device groups that will receive the deployment. Once the targeting structure is ready, you add the application into Intune by uploading or configuring the app package. Next, you configure any required policies, such as protections or install conditions, to meet organizational requirements. Finally, you monitor deployment results to verify successful installation and identify any issues that may require troubleshooting. Question 31. Which two configuration options can Intune apply to apps after deployment? Select two answers. A. Apply a VPN gateway setting to force app-based tunneling. B. Specify a server address for an iOS app using app configuration policy. C. Configure website access restrictions using managed browser settings. D. Restrict app installation from the Apple App Store. The correct answers are B. Specify a server address for an iOS app using app configuration policy. And C. Configure website access restrictions using managed browser settings. Here's the explanation. First, option B is correct because app configuration policies in Intune can push specific settings like server URLs directly into an iOS app, so users do not have to manually type server details when they sign in. For example, an email app can receive its mail server address automatically, reducing setup errors on hundreds of iPhones. Additionally, option C is correct since managed browser settings allow Intune to control which websites users can access from corporate browsers, enforcing rules such as allowing only approved SaaS portals while blocking personal sites during work use. However, option A is not correct in this context because VPN gateway settings are configured through VPN profiles, not as per app configuration options after deployment. Finally, option D is wrong because restricting installation from the Apple App Store is handled through Apple Business Manager and device restrictions, not through app-level Intune configuration policies. Therefore, the two configuration options Intune can apply to apps after deployment are B and C. Question 32. Which of the following capabilities is exclusive to managed apps compared to unmanaged apps? Select one answer. A. Ability to install from public app stores. B. Container-level OS enforcement. C. Selective wipe of app data. D. User-initiated installs via web portal. The correct answer is C. Selective wipe of app data. Here is the explanation. Selective wipe is unique to Intune managed applications because Intune can remove only the organizational data stored within the app while leaving personal data untouched, which is essential for BYOD environments. For example, if a contractor leaves the company, Intune can erase only corporate email and files from Outlook without deleting their personal photos or messages. Conversely, option A is incorrect since installing from public app stores is something unmanaged apps already rely on. Option B is not exclusive either because some operating systems provide container-level separation natively, even without Intune management. Option D is also not exclusive, as both managed and unmanaged app scenarios can support user-initiated installs through a portal. Therefore, the exclusive capability is C. Selective wipe of app data. Question 33. Your company wants legacy websites to open in a completely separate Internet Explorer 11 window instead of inside Microsoft Edge tabs. Which configuration will best meet this requirement? Select one answer. A. Set Internet Explorer compatibility mode to Edge. B. Select the Open in Standalone IE11 window option in IE mode policy. C. Use group policy to enable enterprise mode with auto-detect. D. Enable Microsoft Edge extensions for legacy sites. The correct answer is B. Select the Open in Standalone IE11 window option in IE mode policy. Let's break down why. Choosing this option instructs Edge to launch legacy sites in a fully separate IE11 window, rather than hosting them inside an Edge IE mode tab. This is ideal for environments that still rely on the classic IE interface or older plugins. On the other hand, option A won't work because compatibility mode applies only inside IE itself and does not force separate IE windows when using Edge. Option C also misses the requirement since auto-detect still opens sites within Edge and doesn't create standalone IE windows. Option D is unrelated because extensions cannot influence rendering engines or separate window behavior. So the correct configuration remains B. Select the Open in Standalone IE11 window option in IE mode policy. Question 34. Which two Intune pages can help you view how apps are assigned and installed across devices? Select two answers. A. Apps Overview. B. Apps Monitor App Install Status. C. Apps Policies Compliance Status. D. Devices Device Configuration. E. Apps Monitor App Licenses. The correct answers are A. Apps Overview and B. Apps Monitor App Install Status. Let's look at why these two fit the requirement. Apps Overview gives you a quick snapshot of assignment details and installation state whenever you open an app's main page. This helps you confirm who the app is targeted to and how deployment is progressing. Additionally, Apps Monitor App Install Status provides deeper visibility by showing install success, failures, and per user or per device results. This makes it the primary place to troubleshoot deployment issues. By comparison, Option C focuses on compliance policies rather than app deployment. Option D relates to configuration profiles and settings, not application installs. And Option E shows licensing information rather than installation activity. So the correct selections are A and B. Apps Overview, Apps Monitor App Install Status. Question 35. Your company plans to roll out apps using Microsoft Intune. Before adding any apps, you've been asked to review whether your users primarily use Windows, iOS, or Android devices. Why is this assessment necessary before adding apps to Intune? Select one answer. A. It determines whether the company should use Microsoft 365 apps. B. It ensures the apps added are compatible with the platforms users actually use. C. It lets you assign apps without needing user group information. D. It enables the automatic detection of all devices in Intune. The correct answer is B. Let's walk through the reasoning. The key idea is compatibility. By identifying the platforms your users rely on, Intune administrators can ensure that every app they deploy actually works on those devices. Consequently, this prevents situations where an app is added but cannot be installed because the operating system is unsupported. Moreover, this assessment helps streamline deployment planning, since different platforms require different app formats or deployment methods. For instance, an app packaged for Windows cannot be deployed to iOS, so Platform Insight avoids unnecessary configuration work. Meanwhile, the other options do not align with Intune's behavior. Platform assessment does not determine whether Microsoft 365 apps should be used, nor does it eliminate the need for user groups. Likewise, Intune does not automatically detect all devices simply because platforms were reviewed. Therefore, the correct choice remains B. Question 36. You are deploying an enterprise mode site list in a small organization. You need a simple tool that provides versioning and URL validation without requiring a server or database. Which tool should you use? Select one answer. A. Enterprise Mode Site List Portal. B. Enterprise Mode Site List Manager v2. C. Microsoft Edge DevTools. D. Group Policy Editor. The correct answer is B. Enterprise Mode Site List Manager v2. Let's move into the explanation. Enterprise Mode Site List Manager v2 is designed for smaller or simpler environments because it provides versioning and URL validation without relying on SQL servers or IIS. This makes it lightweight and easy to implement when you do not have large infrastructure in place. Meanwhile, the Enterprise Mode Site List Portal is intended for larger enterprises and requires SQL, IIS, and Active Directory, which adds unnecessary complexity for a small setup. Additionally, Microsoft Edge DevTools cannot create or manage site lists at all, and the Group Policy Editor only consumes and applies the list but cannot build or maintain it. So the correct choice remains B. Enterprise Mode Site List Manager v2. Question 37. You are configuring self-service password reset for a pilot group in Microsoft Entra ID. You want to ensure users can authenticate securely if they forget their passwords. Which two options are valid alternative authentication methods? Select two answers. A. Security questions. B. Alternative email address. C. SMS-based login only. D. Device IP address. The correct answers are A. Security questions, and B. Alternative email address. Now let's walk through why these are the right choices. Security questions are fully supported in Microsoft Entra SSPR, allowing users to verify their identity by answering predefined questions. Likewise, an alternative email address gives users a secure channel where they can receive verification codes to reset their passwords, making it a valid secondary authentication method. Conversely, SMS-based login only is not considered an alternative authentication method in the context of password reset, even though SMS itself can be used as part of verification. And a device IP address is never used as an authentication factor, since it cannot securely validate user identity. Therefore, the valid options remain A, security questions, and B, alternative email address. Question 38. Your organization hosts multiple tenants in a virtualized Hyper-V environment segmented with VLANs. Each tenant requires secure remote connectivity from their offsite locations into their isolated VM networks within your data center. The solution must support dynamic routing to adapt to network changes and must also provide internet access for tenant VMs. Which solution should you implement? Select one answer. A. Deploy a single tenant RAS gateway. B. Use direct access with group policy. C. Configure a multi-tenant RAS gateway with BGP and NAT. D. Implement web application proxy for all VM apps. The correct answer is C. Configure a multi-tenant RAS gateway with BGP and NAT. Let's break down why this option fits the scenario so well. A multi-tenant RAS gateway is specifically built for environments where many tenants share the same virtualized infrastructure, and it understands how to route traffic securely to separate VM networks. Furthermore, when you add BGP, the gateway can automatically adapt to network topology changes, which is exactly what you need for dynamic routing between tenants and external networks. In addition, enabling NAT on that gateway allows tenant VMs to access the internet without exposing their internal addresses directly, much like how home routers hide private IPs behind a public one. By contrast, a single tenant RAS gateway lacks the isolation and scalability required for multiple tenants. Direct access does not support multi-tenant designs or BGPs, and web application proxy only publishes specific web apps rather than providing full network-level connectivity to VM networks. Consequently, the best solution that satisfies secure remote access, dynamic routing, and internet access for tenant VMs is C. Configure a multi-tenant RAS gateway with BGP and NAT. Question 39. Indicate whether each of the following statements is true or false. Always On VPN works on both domain-joined and non-domain-joined devices. True. Direct access requires devices to be joined to the internal domain. The NPS server handles certificate enrollment for Always On VPN. False. ADCS provides certificate services used in Always On VPN authentication. True. Let's go through the reasoning behind each statement. To begin with, Always On VPN supports both domain-joined and non-domain-joined devices, which gives organizations flexibility when managing a mix of corporate and personal endpoints. In comparison, direct access is limited because it requires devices to be joined to the internal Active Directory domain, making it unsuitable for non-domain-joined scenarios. On the other hand, the NPS server does not issue certificates for Always On VPN. Instead, its role is to handle authentication and authorization decisions during VPN connections. Finally, ADCS is responsible for issuing and managing the certificates used by Always On VPN, which is essential for certificate-based authentication. So the correct evaluations remain true, true, false, and true. Question 40. What are the three components of a Microsoft Entra Group membership rule? Select three answers. A. Operator. B. Value. C. Group scope. D. Property. The correct answers are A. Operator. B. Value. And D. Property. Now that we have identified the correct answers, let me walk you through the reasoning behind each one. To begin with, the operator defines how a comparison is performed within the rule, such as equals or contains, which determines how conditions are evaluated. Next, the value represents the specific data the rule is checking against, for example, a department name or location, making it essential for deciding who qualifies for membership. Following that, the property specifies the user or device attribute being evaluated, such as job title or device type, which forms the foundation of the rule logic. On the other hand, group scope does not belong to the rule structure itself. Instead, it is a separate group configuration setting and does not participate in membership rule evaluation. That is why the correct answers are A, operator, B, value, and D, property. Question 41. For each statement below, indicate whether it is true or false. Dynamic group evaluation is triggered when user or device attributes change. Compliance policies can only be used with conditional access. False. Assigning a compliance policy to a user applies it to all of their devices. True. Microsoft Intune supports automatic device enrollment into groups based on display name. True. Now that we have gone through the statements and their correct answers, let's walk through the reasoning behind each one. To begin with the first statement, dynamic groups continuously evaluate membership rules. Therefore, when attributes such as department or display name change, group membership updates automatically without manual action. Moving to the next statement, compliance policies are not limited to conditional access. Instead, they can also be used independently for monitoring and reporting device health, which is why this statement is false. Next, consider user-based compliance assignments. When a policy is assigned to a user, Intune evaluates every device that user enrolls. As a result, all of their devices are covered by that single assignment. Finally, looking at automatic group enrollment, Intune supports dynamic device rules. Consequently, attributes like device.displayname can be used to automatically place devices into groups as they enroll. That is how each statement aligns with how Microsoft Entra ID and Intune actually behave in real environments. Question 42. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To access the Intune data warehouse, you must be a global administrator or have role-based access to the reporting resource. The preferred method of authentication for service integrations is application-only authentication. Now that we have identified the correct selections, let's go step by step and explain why each one fits. Starting with access to the Intune data warehouse, a global administrator role provides full visibility across Intune resources. Therefore, users with this role can access reporting data without additional configuration. In addition to that, role-based access allows organizations to grant reporting permissions without full administrative rights. As a result, specific users can securely access the data warehouse based on delegated roles. Finally, when it comes to service integrations, application-only authentication is preferred because it enables secure service-to-service communication without relying on user credentials. This approach is commonly used for automation, reporting tools, and long-running integrations. Taken together, these settings ensure secure, controlled, and scalable access to Intune reporting capabilities. Question 43. For each VPN tunneling protocol in Windows, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it against its defining characteristic. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Uses IPsec-based cryptography and supports cryptography suite settings via CSP. Can be configured with a pre-shared key using L2TP PSK setting in VPN v2 CSP. L2TP, supported only on Windows desktop editions and not via MDM. SSTP, protocol attempted in automatic configuration mode. SSTP. Now that we have gone through the statements and the correct matches, let me walk you through the reasoning behind each one. Starting with IKv2, this protocol relies on IPsec for tunneling and encryption, which is why it supports advanced cryptography settings through the VPN v2 CSP, making it a strong choice for secure and modern VPN connections. Next is L2TP. This protocol supports authentication using a pre-shared key, configured through the L2TPSK setting in the VPN v2 CSP, which explains its role in environments that still depend on shared key VPN setups. Looking at SSTP, this protocol is limited to Windows desktop editions, so it cannot be deployed using MDM solutions like Intune. Additionally, when a VPN profile is set to automatic, Windows attempts SSTP as one of the connection methods. Taken together, These behaviors show how Windows selects and applies VPN protocols based on security capabilities, management support, and connection configuration choices. Question 44. Which two tunneling protocols can be configured using the VPN v2 Configuration Service Provider CSP? Select two answers. A. L2TP with PSK. B. PPTP. C. IKV2. D. SSTP. The correct answers are A. L2TP with PSK and C. IKV2. Let's look at why these two are correct. L2TP with PSK is configurable through the VPN v2 CSP because Windows exposes the L2TP PSK setting for pre-shared key authentication. Therefore, administrators can deploy and control that configuration through MDM policies. IKV2 is also supported in the VPN v2 CSP because it uses IPsec and ICAKE settings that can be defined through CSP options like the cryptography suite. As a result, it fits modern managed VPN deployments where strong encryption must be set centrally. By contrast, PPTP is a legacy protocol and is not configured through the VPN v2 CSP. Meanwhile, SSTP may be available on Windows desktops, but it is not configurable using MDM through the VPN v2 CSP. So those two options are not correct. Question 45. For each statement below, indicate whether it is true or false. Windows Information Protection can encrypt files downloaded from SharePoint to personal devices. True. BitLocker can protect against offline tampering of system boot files. True. EFS allows you to recover encrypted data even if the private key is lost, without any setup. False. False. Azure Rights Management allows for encryption and rights control even after the document leaves the organization. Now that we have the correct true or false selections, let's go through the logic behind each one. Starting with Windows Information Protection. WIP can apply encryption and protection to organizational data downloaded from cloud sources like SharePoint. So even on a personal device, the file can remain protected as corporate data. Next, BitLocker helps defend against offline boot tampering because it uses the TPM and boot integrity checks. Therefore, if someone tries to modify boot components or access the disk offline, the device can require recovery and block unauthorized access. For EFS, recovery is not guaranteed without preparation. Because if the private key is lost and you did not configure a data recovery agent or key archival, the encrypted data cannot be recovered, which is why that statement is false. Finally, Azure Rights Management continues enforcing usage restrictions even outside the organization. As a result, encryption and controls like read-only or no forwarding can still apply after a document is shared externally. So the correct evaluations remain true, true, false, and true. Question 46. A security administrator wants to prevent the use of NTLM and Kerberos-derived credentials on unauthorized protocols such as NTLM v1 and CredSSP. The goal is to isolate and secure stored secrets even if malware runs with admin privileges on the OS. Which feature should the administrator enable to meet this requirement? Select one answer. A. Virtual Smart Card. B. Microsoft Defender Application Guard. C. Windows Defender Credential Guard. D. Secure Boot with BitLocker. The correct answer is C. Windows Defender Credential Guard. Let's go ahead and explain this. Windows Defender Credential Guard isolates NTLM, Kerberos, and other credential secrets using virtualization-based security, ensuring that even if malware gains elevated privileges, those secrets remain protected. Moreover, it actively blocks the insecure protocols listed in the question, which directly aligns with the administrator's goal. Meanwhile, Virtual Smart Card strengthens authentication but does not isolate LSA secrets or block protocol misuse. Additionally, Microsoft Defender Application Guard focuses on isolating browser sessions, not credential protection. Finally, Secure Boot with BitLocker protects OS integrity and disk encryption, but does not isolate credential material the way Credential Guard does. Question 47. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Microsoft Defender Antivirus lets you create exclusions to prevent false positives and configure alert levels to determine threat severity responses. After going through the question and the selected answers, let me explain how this works. Exclusions is correct because Microsoft Defender Antivirus allows administrators to exclude specific files, folders, processes, or file types from scans, therefore reducing false positives that could interfere with legitimate applications. Alert levels is also correct because these settings determine how Defender responds based on the severity of detected threats, consequently helping security teams prioritize alerts and take the right action at the right time. On the other hand, quarantines apply only after a threat is detected and do not control scanning behavior. Service accounts relate to identity management rather than antivirus configuration. BitLocker modes focus on disk encryption, while VPN policies belong to network security, not endpoint protection. This approach keeps antivirus protection accurate while remaining effective in real-world enterprise environments. Question 48. In Windows 10, where can you find the protection history feature that lists recent threats? Select one answer. A. Family options. B. Device performance and health. C. Virus and threat protection. D. App and browser control. The correct answer is C. Virus and threat protection. Now that we have identified the correct answer, let me walk you through the reasoning behind it. To begin with, virus and threat protection is the main area within Windows security where Microsoft Defender manages malware detection and response. Because of that, protection history is located there, allowing users to review detected threats along with the actions taken or recommended. Next, Family Options focuses on parental controls and user activity settings, so it does not include threat reporting. Similarly, Device Performance and Health is designed to show system health metrics like battery, storage, and drivers, rather than security incidents. Finally, App and Browser Control deals with Smart Screen and protection against unrecognized apps, not historical malware events. As a result, virus and threat protection is the correct and most logical place to find protection history in Windows 10. Question 49. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. In Cloud Discovery, you can create IP address tags to categorize cloud usage and assign domains to help filter and group discovered data. Now that we have gone through the question and the selected answers, let me explain how this works in practice. To start with, IP address tags are used to label traffic coming from specific IP ranges. This allows organizations to categorize cloud usage, for example, distinguishing between corporate office traffic and branch office traffic. As a result, cloud activity becomes easier to analyze and control. Next, domains are used to group and filter discovered data based on corporate or email domain information. This is especially useful when identifying which cloud services are being accessed by users from trusted domains versus external ones. In real-world environments, combining IP address tags with domains helps security teams clearly see where cloud traffic originates and how it should be classified. Therefore, these two options work together to provide better visibility and more accurate cloud usage insights. Question 50. Arrange the following actions for protecting enterprise data using WIP and related technologies in the correct order. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. The correct order is: define rules that identify sensitive organizational data, apply DLP to automatically detect and control data, enable IRM to embed protection into documents, use enlightened apps to differentiate between personal and organizational data, set app access rules, and enable selective wipe for personal devices. We have gone through the correct sequence, and I will now explain why this order makes sense. To begin with, defining rules that identify sensitive organizational data is essential because the system must first understand what data needs protection. Without clear classification rules, no enforcement can be applied accurately. Next, DLP is applied to automatically detect and control data based on those rules. As a result, sensitive information can be monitored and restricted without relying on manual intervention. After that, IRM is enabled to embed protection directly into documents. This ensures that even when files are shared or leave the organization, usage rights such as read or edit restrictions remain enforced. Then, enlightened apps come into play by recognizing whether data is personal or organizational. Consequently, these apps apply the correct protection behavior depending on the data context. Finally, app access rules and selective wipe are configured for personal devices. This allows organizations to remove only corporate data during offboarding or security incidents, while leaving personal data untouched. Together, this sequence reflects how enterprise data protection is designed in real environments, starting with identification and ending with secure control on user devices. Question 51. For each WIP-related capability, drag it to the appropriate boxes in the correct match column to match it against its description in the option column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Encrypts local organizational data and binds it to the enterprise identity. WIP, local encryption, prevents employees from sharing protected data with no override option. Block mode logs employee attempts to override warnings and continues to allow the action. Allow overrides. Allows admins to recover encrypted data if a key is lost. Data recovery agent certificate. Identifies where WIP can find organizational data on the network. Network boundary definition. Now I will walk through the reasoning. WIP local encryption is the right fit because it automatically encrypts organizational data on a device and associates it with the enterprise identity. Then, block mode aligns with the second item since it enforces strict sharing restrictions with no override path available. Allow overrides matches the third description as it lets users proceed with risky actions, but logs every attempt for auditing. Data recovery agent certificate applies to the fourth line because it allows decryption when encryption keys are lost or invalid. Lastly, network boundary definition matches the fifth statement because it defines trusted network elements where organizational data can be recognized and protected. That concludes the correct matching explanation. Question 52. What is the role of Microsoft Defender Test Ground? Select one answer. A. To view telemetry collected by behavioral sensors. B. To test and confirm the functionality of Defender Exploit Guard features. C. To download Microsoft Defender installation media. D. To simulate malware for penetration testing. The correct answer is B. To test and confirm the functionality of Defender Exploit Guard features. Let's go through the explanation. Microsoft Defender Test Ground is designed to validate how Exploit Guard rules behave without using real threats. It allows administrators to safely confirm that protections are applied correctly, making option B the accurate choice. Meanwhile, telemetry viewing is handled in Microsoft 365 Security Center or through advanced hunting, so option A does not fit this tool's purpose. Additionally, Test Ground does not distribute installation media, which rules out option C. And option D is incorrect because Test Ground is not built for offensive or red team simulations. It focuses strictly on validating policy functionality. So the correct answer remains B. To test and confirm the functionality of Defender Exploit Guard features. Question 53. Which deployment mode of Microsoft Defender for cloud apps enables out-of-band access to third-party apps without interfering with current solutions? Select one answer. A. Log collection. B. Reverse proxy. C. API connectors. D. Real-time protection. The correct answer is C. API connectors. Here's the explanation. API connectors operate out of band, meaning they integrate directly with cloud services without affecting existing CASB or network configurations. This allows deep visibility and governance while keeping current solutions intact. In contrast, log collection only gathers activity logs and does not provide integration capabilities, so option A cannot be correct. Similarly, reverse proxy solutions can interfere with existing proxies or traffic flows, removing option B from consideration. And real-time protection is simply a general security concept, not an actual deployment mode, which makes option D unsuitable. Therefore, the correct choice remains C. API connectors. Question 54. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Establishing an end-to-end desktop deployment process reduces manual errors. True. You can safely skip planning for remote offices if most users work on premises. False. Documenting small branch offices is not necessary for deployment planning. False. A well-documented deployment process improves consistency across sites. True. Now let's go through the explanation. Establishing an end-to-end deployment process is marked true because a defined workflow minimizes mistakes and ensures repeatability across deployments. Next, skipping planning for remote offices is false, since all locations, even small or less frequently used ones, must be included to avoid connectivity or hardware issues later. Similarly, the statement about excluding branch offices is false, because even small sites may have unique requirements that affect deployment success. Finally, a well-documented deployment process is true as it promotes consistent outcomes across different locations, improving overall reliability. Question 55. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Endpoint Analytics provides a work-from-anywhere report that shows which devices are ready for Windows 11 and why others are not. Now let's walk through the explanation. Endpoint Analytics is correct because it offers detailed insights into device performance and readiness, including compatibility signals for Windows 11. Additionally, the Work from Anywhere report is the right choice since it specifically evaluates Windows 11 readiness and highlights any blockers that may prevent an upgrade. Meanwhile, Microsoft Intune alone does not generate readiness reports, so it would not fit here. Desktop Analytics also isn't suitable because it requires Configuration Manager and is no longer the preferred solution. Intune Hardware Explorer is not an actual reporting feature tied to Windows 11 readiness, and Application Overview focuses on app usage, not OS readiness. Together, Endpoint Analytics and Work from Anywhere form the correct combination for identifying Windows 11 upgrade readiness across devices. Question 56. Arrange the following MDT task sequence actions in the correct order of execution. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Gather. Format and partition. Inject drivers. Apply operating system. Windows update. I'll explain how this sequence fits together. The process starts with gather because MDT must first read and evaluate configuration settings from the deployment share. After that, format and partition prepares the disk so the operating system has a clean, structured location to install. Next, inject drivers is performed, ensuring the system has the required hardware support before the OS is applied. Then apply operating system installs the actual Windows image onto the machine. Finally, Windows Update runs to bring the system up to date with the latest patches and security updates, often pulling updates from WSUS or online sources. This order ensures a stable, functional deployment workflow from configuration to a fully updated operating system. Question 57. For each Configuration Manager capability, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Allows delivery of Windows builds to devices. OS deployment. Enables software delivery directly to end users. Self-service software catalog. Tracks installed applications across the environment. Basic license tracking. Enables secure device management for remote workers. Cloud Management Gateway. CMG. Captures and restores data during a deployment. User settings. Capture and restore. I will now explain the reasoning behind each correct match. To begin, OS deployment is the capability responsible for delivering Windows builds to devices. It handles operating system imaging and installation, which aligns directly with this description. Next, self-service software catalog allows users to install approved applications on their own. Consequently, it fits the requirement for enabling software delivery directly to end users. Additionally, Basic license tracking provides insight into installed applications and helps organizations understand software usage. Therefore, it aligns with tracking installed applications across the environment. Furthermore, Cloud Management Gateway extends Configuration Manager functionality to remote devices by creating a secure cloud connection. As a result, it supports secure device management for remote workers. Finally, User Settings Capture and Restore is designed for retaining user profiles and application settings during deployments. Hence, it matches the description involving capturing and restoring data during deployment. Question 58. What is one reason some administrators used MDT alongside older versions of Configuration Manager? Select one answer. A. To enable boot from VHD. B. To leverage the MDT rules engine and task sequence variables. C. To enforce BitLocker compliance policies. D. To connect with the Microsoft Store. The correct answer is B. To leverage the MDT rules engine and task sequence variables. Now let's move into the explanation. MDT provided a powerful rules engine and flexible task sequence variables that older config releases did not offer. This meant administrators could achieve deeper customization and automation by integrating MDT with their deployment process. Moreover, enabling boot from VHD is unrelated to MDT, so option A does not align with the feature set. Additionally, BitLocker compliance is generally managed through Intune or group policy rather than MDT, which rules out option C. Finally, connecting with the Microsoft Store has no link to deployment tooling like MDT or config, making option D irrelevant. Question 59. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Configuration Manager boot images are based on Windows PE and must include appropriate network and storage drivers to ensure successful deployments. Now I'll walk you through the explanation. Windows PE is used as the foundation because it provides a lightweight environment that can initialize hardware, connect to deployment points, and launch task sequences effectively. Additionally, network and storage drivers are essential since the deployment engine must access network shares and storage devices during imaging. Without these drivers, the boot image would fail to communicate or read necessary files. On the other hand, PXE servers only deliver the boot image and are not part of its base. Likewise, task sequences run after the boot phase, USB controllers are optional, and application binaries are applied later in the process rather than included in the boot image. Question 60. Which two actions can be performed using the columns and filter options in the All Devices view in Intune? Select two answers. A. Select which fields are included in the exported report. B. View only devices with a specific compliance state. C. Add or remove audit log entries. D. Export reports directly to Power BI. The correct answers are A. Select which fields are included in the exported report. And B. View only devices with a specific compliance state. Now let's move into the explanation. Selecting which fields appear in an exported report is handled through the columns option, which lets administrators customize the dataset they want to export. Similarly, the filter option allows narrowing the device list to only those that meet specific criteria, such as compliance status, operating system, or ownership. Conversely, audit log entries cannot be added or removed because audit logs are read-only records of activity. And exporting directly to Power BI is not supported from this view since Intune exports reports as CSV files rather than providing a direct integration pathway.